Hi guys, and welcome back to chapter 9. We are now on monopoly. We discussed perfect competition in chapter 8, monopoly in 9, and then we're going to do the other two in chapter 10. So let's together look at the characteristics of a monopoly. Now notice there can only be one queen. There can only be one orange boat, right? It is really about uniqueness. So when we say what are the characteristics of a monopoly, think of what mono is. Mono is one, right? So this is about control by one. So the characteristics begin with one seller. In contrast to perfect competition, which has many, there are no close substitutions. What kind of product did perfect competition have? Perfect competition has an identical product, or one that is homogeneous, which means no matter who the seller is, you're getting pretty much the same. This one has the opposite. For a monopoly, the product is unique. No close substitutions means you can't say, I don't want to buy from you, I will buy something that works for me from someone else. Nothing else is going to work for you because everything else is too distant from what this company actually sells. And 3 is extremely high barriers to entry. So you can tell by now that you are looking at the polar opposite to perfect competition. When we say barriers to entry, we mean it's not easy to enter the market and it may not be easy to exit the market as well. The other thing that's missing here in comparison to perfect competition is you do not have transparency. Unlike perfect competition where the buyer is aware, the buyer knows absolutely nothing. This is a company that can completely safeguard anything that it's actually doing. Now, when it comes to barriers to entry, there are two kinds. There are legal barriers in blue and there are market barriers in green. And this really does matter because legal barriers are government monopolies. So legal barriers here are the kinds of barriers that are put in place by the government. Market barriers, on the other hand, are called market because free enterprise is actually setting them, meaning the government has nothing to do with it. It's the way the market happens to have, or based on the conditions that the market has to have, and I'm going to go over those in a minute. Now, legal barriers come in 3s: patents, licenses, and public franchises. What is a patent? A patent means you have come up with a product. It could be medicine, it could be something for engineering, it could be a methodology of some sort, it could be a formula. You come up with something and you want to make sure that you're the only one for X number of years who can actually sell it. Some patents last 5 years, something like pharmaceuticals. Some patents last 20 years. But the point is, it depends on what it is. But we have a question here that says, when we live in a capitalist society, why are we allowing patents? Don't patents create monopoly? They do. But patents are a way of rewarding innovation. We want to make sure that people don't fear that they're going to spend money and time and effort, and then the minute they come up with something, a bigger company will swoop in, steal what they have done, which actually still happens, but patents restrict that somewhat. At least you can have a lawsuit that way. And then they can basically outdo the person who invested their time and effort into it by stealing it. And we don't want that to happen because we want to protect innovation and encourage people to sacrifice to get there, because that leads to technology, a bigger economy, better quality, all the wonderful things that we know happen when there's innovation, to jobs, etc. So we protect it. Now, licenses. The government decides who can get a license. So for instance, a gambling license might create a monopoly. Only one company gets a license in a reasonable driving distance, for instance, for a 2-hour drive, for a 5-hour drive. And by that I mean, if there's another casino within 5 hours of you, they're probably not exactly your competition like they would had they been across the street. So the government can decide how many people get a license. The ultimate license in this company, and I'm going to show you some examples in a minute, and I meant this country, is Crane & Company. Crane & Company from Massachusetts is the only company in the US allowed to produce the unique type of linen paper that the money is printed on, that the Fed prints the money on. So it is, unique that way. Only one has it. It could be some sort of research and development facility that uses very dangerous chemicals, and the government restricts who can have it. Smith & Wesson, for instance, has a license to produce arms, but not a bunch of other ones around it. That is a way of restricting competition. And then there are public franchises. And public franchises, you know what they are because you have hated some of them, I am sure. Think, for instance, of the only cable company that's allowed in town, the only electric company, the only water company. How many people complain about their cable company, for instance, because they don't like them, they think they're expensive, but they can't go get somebody else. They can't get either the internet or cable through them. Now, these things are changing, but still, it could be natural gas in the region. So this restricts who can actually sell you a particular commodity. And these are the public franchises. So again, when the government, remember this is the government, and this is why these are called government monopolies, issues either a patent that says you're the only one who can sell for X number of years, or a license, you're the only one who can sell or produce within a certain region, and then public franchises, the only company that can provide some sort of service in town, those are monopolies that are established and the legal barriers prevent anybody else from competing with them. Then you have market barriers. Market barriers mean that the conditions in the market have created a monopoly. A market barrier is also, or a market monopoly, is also a natural monopoly. It's called natural because, here, I should actually put that here for you. Because natural monopolies mean that nobody tried to manipulate anything. It's just the way it evolved. And there are two: economies of scale and exclusive ownership of a scarce resource. Economies of scale means the more a company produces, the lower the average total cost is going to be. And if you remember, this is the per unit cost. So a company benefits from producing on a massive scale, and the bigger their scale is, the more difficult it is for others to compete with them. And I'll give you an example in a minute. Exclusive ownership of a scarce natural resource, that one has to do with there's one company that has access, for instance, to a particular kind of wood, to a particular kind of marble, to a particular kind of granite, to a particular chemical. Maybe it takes, expensive mining. We know, for instance, we're having shortages of batteries, so lithium becomes important. So think about how at one point there weren't too many sources of lithium, and so it's possible that the one company that has it can control the market. This is actually what happened with Standard Oil, which was the first monopoly in the United States, and that's because Rockefeller had a monopoly on oil. And because of that monopoly on oil, nobody else could actually sell the oil. So what he would do is he would buy up smaller companies and kill them. He wouldn't allow the small land that they have that has potential for oil to actually extract any oil. So he would limit how much oil comes to the market, and if he wants to expand it, all he has to do is tap into the land that has already proven itself to have had oil. And that was the first big monopoly that was eventually broken up into Exxon and Mobil. And so when they went back together into ExxonMobil, they were just reforming the original Standard Oil company. I'm going to stop this video right here because my next point is time consuming, and I want to make sure that I don't rush through it. So I'll see you in video 2 in a bit.